that they sort of shed a little bit of light at what they didn't spend a lot of time on it, but I thought the observation was true, and it landed as like in the first movie, I don't know, I think I was like in grade 9 or something, when the first movie came out. And I remember watching it, there was that guy, I don't remember his name, but there was like the guy, like the Weasley looking guy who was the Judas kind of character who yeah, and he wants he's eating the steak and he wants to get plugged back into the Matrix. And I remember, like, you know, there was a part of me at that time like, oh, why would anyone want to live like a not real life, even if real life is more bland? Like I knew, like I was going along with it, but I was like, oh, that guy, like he's wrong. He should be on the path of truth. And that and in this movie, when they say like people just generally don't want that, and how accepted that idea is now, and how normal that idea is, that we're so plugged in, that we need our phones, that we need our screens, and that we don't want anyone to take sort of this matrix away from us. Like that's very integrated into us now, like how, you know, we let Siri or Alexa or whatever just like record our lives, and we're just like, oh, it's fine. Whereas I think when I was in grade 9, that would have been like, our privacy was more important to us, our you know, that transition hadn't fully happened the way that it has now.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you catching that. It does seem like it represents a shift in, you know, cultural perspective on something. You know, and I think the way that I would obviously explain that is that, you know, at one point it's something new and unfamiliar, and therefore there's a lot of distrust. And of course, now to whatever degree we've adopted it out of convenience, out of our own laziness, or to whatever degree it's been forced upon us, in certain areas, now it's like, oh, we've been living with it. We've been living with the machines. So therefore we can trust, quote unquote, trust the machines more. I mean, seriously, look at the, you know, the statistics in terms of like trust against corporations and the way in which it's so low, but those people are still using those corporations products, you know, like, so there is definitely a ton of truth, obviously, in that perspective, you know, where, you know, people just want to be led. And I think, I would imagine you and I have that general awareness or perspective anyways, because when we sort of do the work that we do, where we're sort of peeling back the layers of the onion, you know, into sort of our truth on our perspective of reality, some people are really hungry for it and they keep coming back for more, and other people who are confronted with it clearly realize they are not ready, and they sort of abandon ship, and we don't see them again because it's like it's a little too confronting, or they're not ready for it, and they, you know, would rather, you know, we're always trying to keep our nervous system, you know, settled. Like that's, you know, John talks about it, right? I forget what phrasing he uses for it, but, you know, what's relevant for us is the thing that keeps the machine going, you know, like is what keeps us alive, you know, or what keeps us feeling alive. And for some people, you know, the over agitation of the nervous system is overwhelming, and it can't be held, and therefore it's undesirable, and therefore, you know, will regress back because it's too complex, they're not ready to go through. Whereas other people are like hungry for it because it's like, oh my God, this feels so good, and I'm like, I can feel like the weight shedding off of me, and, you know, and therefore, you know,
and there are other people that like are like, wow, why does this trigger me? I need to figure that out. Like, yeah.
Well, sure, but it's the desire to figure it out, right? Is so yes, constantly leaning into that discomfort, right? But of course, if you know, there's, you know, the famous you know, the two circles, you know, like a comfort zone and growth, you know, and like I guess I don't remember if that diagram's a Venn diagram or not, but the idea is like it's like just outside your comfort zone is where you can actually have growth. But if you're too far out, you know, we say, you know, like in yoga, stretch, don't tear. So for some people, you know, doing circling is tearing, And for other people, it's a stretch. And for some people, it's barely a warm up too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I just noticed that like, that just felt really like, just, it gave me a moment. It gave me a moment to pause and consider how the world has changed in that way since I was in grade 9, 20 years ago
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, and it's been pretty extreme, I think, and how we've changed in that way.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think we're seeing how innovations in technology continually outpace our capacity to properly integrate them in a safe way, which is why we have so much commentary in terms of the damage of social media platforms, where in the past I would get really angry. It's like, it's not the platform. There's nothing wrong with the platform. It's the people. And I still actually believe that that's the case. However, I also believe that the platform creators, the people creating this technology, do have an ethical responsibility to sort of implement this technology in a way in which people can't get in over their heads.
Yeah.
However, the degree at which I expect them to be able to do that in a very effective way, I have a fair bit of leeway on that, because I think it's a very hard thing, because different people come in with different capacities. And therefore, I don't like being spoon fed and handheld doing things. But I also think some people probably need that. Otherwise, they will get in over their heads, like the whole thing about overfeeding fish, right? Like, they'll just keep eating if you keep giving them food. So you have to spread out their feeding so that they stay alive.
The thing for me with how social, like, I agree that at least theoretically, social media, it's like any tool, like you can use it for good or you can use it for awesome. It's up to you. But
Mhm.
I, the thing, it seems so designed to be very addictive. It's so designed to be very addictive, and to like just the way that it like bumps to the next thing, how you can't really control what you're seeing. Like there'll be random things that pop up from other channels that you're not following or whatever, that kind of bombard you. Like if I could use Instagram just to keep in touch with my friends and family, even if I had to pay for a service to get rid of ads or to get rid of content that I don't want to see, I would do that. But instead I just get like kind of bombarded with a bunch of stuff, and I get very like focused in on it, and it's a very easy distraction for me to fall into. So I sort of have to avoid it, because it triggers those dopamine centers or whatever for me, that kind of make it hard for me to take myself away, and I'm like kind of falling down this rabbit hole now. So I think theoretically it's a neutral, or it could be a neutral thing, but I think they design it obviously to be quite addictive.
Yeah, I think that could be an interesting discussion for us to have in terms of the question of intent. Um, I think maybe the Coles Notes version of my perspective on it is that once you integrate it into a capitalist system, especially if you're dealing with public companies, you sort of end up into a very sketchy sort of position where, Google's motto used to be "Do no evil," which they've sort of gotten rid of, because there's the degree in which they're doing stuff that's important to turn around and grow the size of the company to appease their shareholders, to keep tens of thousands of people working. So it becomes this very competitive, very aggressive, one could perhaps say patriarchally sort of structure, where the goal is to win, win, win. Um, so it's hard for me to sort of look at that's why I say ethics, because I think, it makes sense to drive any product. I mean, think about the church, think about the Catholic Church. So you've got all these different levels of, what do we want to say, structure around the spiritual aspects of, say, Christianity. But they have a funnel system that turns around and puts children into Sunday school that sort of tells the more magic mythic narrative rather than the deeper stuff, because the kids don't have the capacity. So there's, and I don't mean this in a like this is an evil thing, but there is a manipulation to turn around and get the children to become more on board and integrate these perspectives into their way of life. We hear this in terms of the way that the food companies make snacks and the way that they make them so easy for you to want to consume more. So the thing is, like, are they making them, I hate this word, but it's now in the dictionary, are they making them addicting? Or is this just taking advantage of a area in human behavior that we are not counterbalancing with better education, with better mental health, with better awareness, so that you can turn around and hold this perspective and notice, like, oh my God, I'm eating the entire bag of chips. What does this say about me? Why did this happen? To turn around and go inward and turn around and notice, like, oh yeah, I'm not feeling really well, or oh, I'm putting all my feelings into food, or whatever those sorts of, so it's there's a way in which it takes advantage. Pornography does the same thing. Films do the same thing. I mean, you were talking earlier about the action ones. Like, there's the action movies, and it's just like bang, 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 explosion, explosion, explosion. And there are people who are just like, that's the movies that they like, and they'll go back to see it, and it's
everything does it that we
everything
consume.
can do it, because they're looking, again, if you go into the capitalist system, the whole idea is, like, to win is to accumulate more finances and more safety, and therefore so that you can, it's all about the having mode, right? So in the having mode, how do I succeed at the having mode? Well, I need to convince more and more people to turn around and pay attention to my stuff. So what are the generally we call them pain points. What are the pain points to turn around and trigger to make my product or my offering relevant? And to a certain degree, we do it, or in some ways, in terms of the marketing for sort of the personal development work, is because there are some, if people are looking for the stuff that we do, we don't have to market it, it's there. But when we know that we're working in a small subsection of the population, it's like, how do you ping off people who don't know what it is that they're looking for, but they're ready for something? So we have to make it relevant to them, which, is what marketing is about.
You can't just say, hey, do you want the red pill? Like, what the fuck's the red pill?
Yeah, exactly. So I see them all as doing it. I think some of them have way more power and way more influence, and therefore I would like to see their ethics of how they do business to be a little bit more, I don't know if the word is regulated, but like enforced. I would really like to sort of see that make a shift. And I think there's a carelessness at which all technology, comes to the fore. We make it immediately accessible, that like children can hold it, and it starts to massively influence their grip on reality. And it's an experiment. Peterson's been saying this for a long time. I mean, sometimes the experiment is just men and women working in the same space, and sometimes the experiment is social media and carrying a lifetime and eternity's worth of information in your pocket, that
we mostly just used for porn,
cat videos, stuff like that. So I think it would be interesting to sort of really sort of dig into that thing about, like, is it addictive? Yes, but for everybody, no. So then what is this actually about? Is it actually really the platform? Is it really the technology? Or is it just we've been going full bore in orange, self-deterministic, industrial sort of age, and we just build more and more and grow it, and to sell more and more.
I think it is designed to be addictive, just the same way that potato chips are designed to be addictive. Like, I think, like, and what I'm saying is, I'm not trying to not take responsibility for my addictions. I do, at least consciously, but but I guess like it would be, how wonderful would it be? And this is just on a wish list that I have no idea how to make happen. But how wonderful would it be if we like, I don't know. I don't know what I want. But something there about, you know, because like with obesity being an epidemic, or with,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I think cell phone addiction is an epidemic as well, or, you know, whatever screens we're looking at. Like I once read a quote like, I work all week on the medium screen so that so on the weekends I can watch the big screen while like talking to people on the little screen or whatever. Like it's just like, you know, there's something there about where does social responsibility or societal responsibility kind of meet individual responsibility, and how can we kind of help the individual without taking away personal agency. I don't fucking know, Taylor.
But then you know, to what degree it's like these platforms are optional. They are not actually being forced on us, so we're actually taking up a choice whether we're conscious of that choice or not to engage with it. So in many ways,
it kind of depends. Like I'm not saying it's not totally not mandatory, but like when I got rid of social media for almost 2 years, like almost all social media,
mm-hmm.
I got it again to engage with authentic relating and with people there. So I got Facebook very reluctantly.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had to get Instagram again more for my job to reach out to the businesses that I was trying to target. Like it's very hard to exist in this world unless you really make it a point to design your life like outside of it and whatever. Like it's almost, it's not quite there, but it's getting to the point of like almost like having internet or having electricity or whatever. Like it's very hard to keep in touch with people. Like there's lots of my friends that, you know, don't know why I don't follow them on Instagram, and don't, you know, like I'm not keeping up with their life in the same way that others are, because I don't want to engage with these platforms, because I know myself. Like it gets difficult when everyone around you is doing a thing and you're not.
Yeah, well, it certainly presents massive challenges for a socialized sort of, from a socialized perspective, because if, you know, if everybody else is not working on their self-awareness to turn around and mediate their use of technology and consumption, and they're just going full bore because it feels good, when everybody's going full bore because it feels good and you want to, you know, actually belong and operate in the world that's more easily tangibly around you, yes, you're sort of shit out of luck. You know, you either do that or you need to structure a different life that allows you to keep that separation. But the thing is that we still have that agency. There is just what is likely overwhelming presentation of ease of just do game A because it's right there. Like all you have to do is do that and it's there, and you can feel some comfort, acceptance, and belonging. Whereas to
Especially
do,
during a pandemic.
especially, yeah. So I, like I certainly agree with the perspective of how hard and omnipresent the threat of suffering through sort of deception is there. You know, if we want to turn around and reach for something, you know, to eat because we don't want to go pick berries and trim, you know, this, that, and the other thing, and wash this and chop that and everything else, there's this processed food that will at least make you feel satiated. And it takes, you know, 5 minutes to turn around and open a bag of or a box of and consume it. So that then goes down to our, you know, this very human, I guess in some degrees, weakness, to turn around and gravitate to what is easy, because who the fuck wants to do something hard if you don't have to?
It's also, I'll defend convenience and humans for a moment here in this, because it also gets difficult, like all these time-saving devices that when they get created, right? Sure, they save time, but then that chasm gets filled very quickly. Like as soon as, you know, laundry machines became a thing and women didn't have to spend 6 hours a week doing laundry, it's like, okay, well, they're expected now to do other things in that time, essentially. And that's fine. But every time we get, and like that, it reminded, like at work, like every time they would implement a new time saving thing, it's like, okay, great, now what else am I going to be expected to do?
Sure.
And so it's like there's an element of that too. It's like nobody fucking has time or opportunity. Not, I shouldn't say nobody, but it's really hard for me to go out and pick berries for my sustenance now.
Of course. Yeah, no, I totally agree, but that's because we continue to play the game A. We continue, you know, we send our kids to public school, most of us. They continue to get a similar, maybe slightly different education that we have, but not substantially different. You know, to become another cog in the general economic, you know, social machine. So again, you know, the prevalence of that way of life is everywhere, and yet there are some people who decide, nope. Now, for what reasons they decide that, whether or not they're, you know, engaging in their own suffering or their own bullshit to turn and engage in that, that's, you know, remains to be seen. But it's not like it's really impossible to do. There's some things that you absolutely can't do because there's the law of the land, and if you don't abide by the law of the land, they will send people out to actually hunt you down and turn around and imprison you. So there are certain freedoms we don't actually have. And for the most part, I find the laws are quite reasonable and ideally what I would want to see. But there are a number of laws, bylaws, and stuff that don't actually make a whole lot of sense across the broad scheme of people, and therefore some people feel like it's keeping them safe, or other people think those laws are keeping them, making them susceptible to more harm. So I'm totally with you on that part. I think, again, the real game changer here is probably the capitalist aspect of it. With a public company, you know, they have a legal, we come back to the law, they have a legal obligation to turn around and increase value in the shares. And if they're not doing that, they could be sued, which then puts, you know, to whatever degree a CEO feels a responsibility for the hundreds, thousands to tens of thousands of employees beneath them to make sure that the company stays afloat so that those people can live their lives however they want to live their lives. You know, I can see that thought process working in a way where it's like, we need to be number one in our market. How do we do that? Well, we turn around and invest in more research and development. Okay, well, research turned around and says that if you add this ingredient, people will eat more. Okay, let's do that. Okay, we sell more. Now we can pay people more. All the people I'm responsible for in my little, you know, orange corporate community are now being taken care of. Damn everybody else. It's almost like this weird sort of tribalist aspect. Like that shift to green, that shift to pluralism is not really happening. And even in the ways in which we see signals that it's happening, they seem egregiously to be virtue signaling.
Oh, I know.
You know, yeah, well, I mean,